Member Bosman, you wanted to say something?
No, I've got nothing to say.
Oh no, because I see that your mic is on. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. It has gone 4. It's a minute after 4 on my clock on the computer. Welcome to the Standing Committee of Education meeting. I just want to request that you all mute yourselves and remain with your videos off. Mine is also off because my connection is a bit dodgy, so I do not want to lose that. And then I want to ask that when you start to speak, that you make use of your microphone. You may also use the video if you wish to. However, I want to ask that where you can, please keep your video on mute. And then please use the hand raise function if you want to put forward points of clarity or points of order. And then also use this chat function. Likewise, if you do not have the raise your hand function, you may use the chat function as well. I, from time to time, will go there and see who wants to pose a question or raise a point of order. With that said, members, my name is Lorraine Botha. I am the chairperson for the Standing Committee on Education, and I wish to welcome you once more. And with that said, I want to ask that each member please introduce yourself for the record. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very
After
much.
Chairperson, Furlan Christians.
Sorry, Chair. Afternoon, Khalid Sayed.
Afternoon, Chair and members and officials, Regan Allen.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Gillian Bosman.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Mesuli Kama.
Good afternoon, Chair. Ricardo Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. I think that is all the members on the platform this afternoon. I want to welcome the Premier on this platform this afternoon, as well as our Minister of Education. And I want to give them the opportunity, if they have officials with them, I want to bestow the opportunity for them to introduce themselves as well for the record. Please go ahead.
I'll start. Thank you very much, Chair. Alan Windy, Premier. And I see that I have got the Director General, Dr. Harry Malila, on, as well as Mr. Lucas Buter from Legal Services. I'm not sure if there's anybody else from the Premier's office, but I'll hand over to the Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is the Premier's real meeting. He's the one who appoints heads of department, so I haven't brought any officials from my department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you very much, Minister. And for the Director General, who has also joined us, thank you very much. Members, the purpose of this meeting today, sorry, before I get there, I just want to also introduce to this platform our Procedural Officer, Wasima Hassan Musa, as well as our Senior Procedural Officer, Mr. Ben Daza. Please be welcomed in this meeting. And Wasima, thank you very much for all the logistics around the arrangements for this engagement. So the purpose of the meeting today is on the Public Service Commission investigation report on the SG for education. And members, you have all received the report, and I shall now give an opportunity to the Premier for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair. And in addition, I think I've just seen Mr. Michael Hendrikse also from the Premier's Department joining this meeting. But thank you very much for this opportunity. And as Minister Schaefer said, that although heads of department and will become accounting officers and also heads of departments and ministers work together, the heads of department are actually appointed through a process and eventually signed off by the Premier. So therefore, I am going to be leading this presentation. So first of all, I would like to say with regard to the Public Service Commission report, right up front, that I absolutely disagree with it. And so I want to now tell this committee why, and of course, then we can get into the discussion. So if I go back to January 2017, and in January 2017, and Mr. Lucas Buter, Legal Services, will also correct me if I make any mistakes in this process, because we have to have it exactly correct. But in January 2017, we asked the National Department of Public Service and Administration for advice around the Section 16 of the Public Service Act, and with regard to extending contracts of heads of department. And that advice came back from that department, National Department of Public Service and Administration, DPSA, that when it comes to retirement age, first of all, it does not apply to heads of department because they are not permanent members of staff. They are actually contract members of staff. And because of that, therefore, approval of Parliament, and here as well, Parliament being the National Assembly, approval of Parliament under 16(7) of the PSA is not required. So this is January 2017. This is the previous dispensation, but and the previous Premier and the previous Department of the Premier asking on the HOD's extension and asking for that advice. That advice is then taken and applied. Mr. Schroeder's contract was then to expire on the 31st of March 2019. And again, we've already got advice now from the DPSA. And again, we take a decision as government then, and of course I was part of that cabinet, in extending contracts and putting contracts in place of heads of department, and noting that Brian Schroeder's contract would be ending just before March, and the election was coming up. We also took a decision that no contracts would be extended for more than 2 years, because we also didn't feel it was fair on a new incumbent Premier as well as the possible new government, because there's an election, and whatever the outcome of that election is, you don't want to saddle 5-year contracts with a new government. We know all about that because that's what we had to contend with 10 years ago, and we thought it's not fair. So we made sure that we didn't extend any of these contracts. Or should I say, we had already done one, and then we said, hang on a second, we actually need to make sure that we're consistent and that we don't extend these contracts. So in 2018, a decision to extend just for 2 years. So in other words, we did need to have stability, and we didn't go beyond the 2 years. So we said that we would extend the contract of Mr. Schroeder based on exactly that same advice, starting 1 April 2019 and ending on 30 March 2021. Then, of course, there was a request, an anonymous request went to the PSC, which eventually came through to us in government to answer questions around the legality of the specific contract. This happened in February 2020. We then had an investigation, 9 July, and we then said to the PSC, these were our reasons. This was the advice that we received. Based on this advice, this is why we made these following decisions. And we sent all of this through to the PSC. And really, I'm not very happy that none of that advice was taken or even included in the final report that was now tabled. None of our comments were taken in. Just a one-sided report now gets tabled. So that's why I said right up front that I absolutely disagree. And so I've said now why 16.167 doesn't apply. What helped us or advised us in our position and our decision making. And I believe that it was the right decision to make. And of course, after that, we get this report. I have then written to the PSC, this was on the 7th of August, to ask why. And then further to that, even on the 13th of August, I've asked the Director General to please engage directly with the DPSA to let's get a confirmation of this position, because we can't have a report tabled in the committee saying one thing and then actual advice that we acted on saying another thing. And so at the moment, we're still waiting for that meeting to take place between the DG and the DPSA to get confirmation. And of course, once that confirmation comes through and we have the two, then what we need to do is then apply our minds. But we applied our minds to the initial advice given to us, and we followed that advice. And of course, now we are waiting and hanging in limbo. With that, what I'm going to do is perhaps just hand over to the DG to ask if he's got any updates on that meeting, whether that's going to be happening anytime soon, because of course, we can't just be reacting to one report. We've got to make sure that the two are in sync and in balance. And then after the DG, if there's anything that Mr. Buter wants to add. Chair, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you
Sorry,
very much.
Chair. DG.
I'm going to give over then to the DJ.
Thank you, Chair. Also, thanks to the Premier. Premier, we've written to the DPSA, and in fact, I think it was 2 days ago, we saw some email exchanges between the Public Service Commissioner and the DPSA, obviously wanting the position of the DPSA on this matter, and the DDG in DPSA have indicated that they have referred this matter, internally to their own team, and that they will obviously communicate back to us when they are ready. So at this point in time, we haven't received any communication from the DPSA that contradicts the original communication that came from them at the time, basically ruling as Premier set out in terms of the HOD appointments. So we've taken a decision based on that at the time, and we haven't received any communication that actually contradicts. So from where we're sitting, that communication is still intact. And until such time that we receive, a follow-up in relation to our letter or different communication, we've basically relied on the communication that came from the DPSA. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask through you, Chair, if Mr. Buter wants to add anything?
Sure.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson, honourable members, Premier and colleagues. Yes, I think, Premier, you gave an accurate factual account of the process. I think maybe just something to also emphasise is the fact that in your comprehensive response to the Public Service Commission, you very strongly suggested that they consult with the DPSA before they finalise this report. And maybe just to provide the committee with the benefit of the reasons for asking them to do so before they complete their report. I think firstly, we made it very clear to the Public Service Commission that, we, as a matter of fact, acted, or the previous Premier acted on the DPSA's advice. And then secondly, the DPSA's advice was the source of both the decision to extend Mr. Schroeder's contract without obtaining national parliamentary approval, and it was also the source for the finding of irregularity. So whilst the Public Service Commission regarded the suggestion that they consult as meritorious, they nevertheless declined to do so, which for me didn't make sense. And maybe also two other things. I think firstly, the other reason why you strongly suggested that they consult the DPSA is that this is not an issue that is unique to the Western Cape government. Potentially, this could affect other DGs and HODs in national departments and other provincial governments who might have been retained beyond the age of 67 without national parliamentary approval. And then finally, I think, it's also important to mention that the Public Service Commission never proffered any reasons for disagreeing with the DPSA. So what we have at this moment in time is advice from the DPSA that is persuasive and it's well reasoned. And the high water mark of the Public Service Commission's report is that the DPSA's advice is wrong. We don't know whether they sourced a legal opinion on that advice from the DPSA, whether internally or externally. But if they did, then clearly we were not taken into their confidence in that respect. So just maybe a few additional points to make around the reason why we felt that why you felt it was important for the DPSA to be consulted before they finalised this report, which might have been fact-specific in respect of the Western Cape government, but it affected the entire public service. And as we know, the Public Service Commission is not there to oversee the Western Cape government. It is there to oversee the public service as a whole. So one would expect them to take this issue up with the DPSA. And once it was resolved transversally, would they then finalise their report? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buerter. Premier?
So, Chair, I mean, and we're happy to answer any questions, but of course, until we get clarity, and that's why on the 13th of August, we wrote and asked that the DG engage specifically to try to get this position finalized. You know, you can't have the policy developer and the policy holder on the one side and the oversight on the other side having contradictory positions. And especially, where you've got someone who's given many, many years of his life to making sure that, our young learners are educated, making sure that, we really perform as a region. And, I even remember when we were extending contracts and things and even having this discussion, I mean, that was when the HOD had just been awarded the Batapele Award of the best functioning department in South Africa. So, I mean, this is someone who has given, years and years of his life, and now all of a sudden, you've got all these questions being raised around, whether, he should have been reappointed, etc. It's absolutely unfair. And I mean, really, I that's why I said right up front, I absolutely disagree with the report. And it's really sad that there hasn't been work done behind the scenes to get agreement. If there's disagreement, well, then you raise the disagreement and we deal with it. But now, tabling a report that's one-sided really is not fair. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and, of course, any of our team. Chair, back to you.
Thank you very much, Premier. I just want to note some people who have joined us after we have started, and I note the Auditor General's office here, and there was somebody else, and also from the Premier's department, I noted Mr. Jumat, who has also joined the meeting. Mr. Jumat, I noted your hand. Was that by accident now?
My apologies, Chair. It was just to confirm that I am in the meeting.
Okay, all right. Be welcome, sir. Thank you. And then all the other observers of this meeting, please be welcome. Members, with that said, we have had the remarks from the Premier and legal services in regard to the report that you have received. I'm now going to open up for a round of questions. Member Bosman, your hand was up before. This is for the round of questioning, is it?
That's correct, Chairperson.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to you just in regard to the round of questioning, members. I'm not going to limit you to questions, but I'm also going to ask you not to do a very long submission. I am of the opinion that you have gone through this report, so please head straight to your question. So I'm noting members Bosman, Karma, and Christians in that order.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to start off by saying when I read this report, I was quite startled that on page 3, the Public Service Commission points out that it is investigating irregularities at the Western Cape Department of Education. But I would assume that the Public Service Commission is aware that HODs at provincial departments are appointed by the Premier and not by the WCED. But in terms of the scope of that investigation, maybe the Premier's legal team can shed some light for me on specifically point 4 under the investigation part of the report, where the Public Service Commissioner is looking for a copy of a resolution by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament approving the retention of Mr. Schroeder for a further period beyond the initial 2 years. I just wanted to find out what aspect of the Public Service Act requires that, because I've read over the Act, and although it explicitly makes reference to provincial departments and the provincial legislatures, it doesn't speak about the provincial parliament having to approve, that it only speaks to Parliament having to approve the extension of appointment of HODs. And as far as I'm concerned, or understand, parliaments don't do, a national parliament does not do that. Chair, I'll stop there for now and come back perhaps later.
Thank you very much, Premier, and also the DG and the legal services in the department of the Premier. I'm going to take this round of questions and then I'm going to give over to you for responses, and then I will take the next round. Member Kama, noting you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and let me welcome the presentations from the Premier. Chair, let me from the onset, Chair, say that I think holding the executive to account does not in any way undermine a service that anybody has given to this government. My first question, Chair, is really I want to first understand, Chair, if the department, when Mr. Schroeder had reached the age of 65, was the post of the HOD advertised then, and if not, what were the reasons? And in that, Chair, was it then advertised after the first 2-year extension? If not, what were the reasons? The other question that I have, Chair, is to check perhaps if there are any other instances where other senior officials within the Western Cape Education Department had their contracts extended beyond of the age of 65, and perhaps what was the rationale, if there are any of those. But the last question, Chair, I want to have for now, Chair, is that in the report, I think at bullet point number 8, which talks on the engagement with the Premier, the commission, I think on 8.5 says that the furnishing of incorrect advice by DPSA cannot render an irregular appointment regular. So I want to get an understanding there, Chair, because seemingly the department or the Premier is saying we appointed based on the advice of DPSA, but the Public Service Commission is saying that advice was not correct, and therefore you acting on an advice that is not correct does not make that appointment regular. So I want to understand, or is the Premier saying there was no explanation from the PSC as to how irrational is the extension beyond the age of 65 without approaching or getting the resolution of Parliament, whether which Parliament as stated by the Act as it concerns. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Christians.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the Premier for that explanation. Of course, we are not now privy to further discussions with DPSA, and we, as the Premier said, we have now a lopsided report, and so the question that I'm asking is, the Premier spoke about stability, and I want to agree with Member Kama that, of course, I was part of the previous Parliament, and nobody can take away about the HOD, Mr. Struder. No, we cannot take anything away from him. What my question is, and like I said, we have a lopsided report, so it's very difficult because you don't know what is discussions and the inputs of DPSA. But the question that I want to ask is, surely when an individual reaches the age of 65, and I know when I was in Scopa, we usually ask the question when we see that people reach the age of retirement, what we usually did was we ask them, do you have a succession plan? Who's going to succeed this man? So I know the post was advertised and a suitable candidate was not, if I'm correct, was not found. But I just again went into the WCED records because they've got 4 DDGs. Mr. Sally Abrams, Dr. Peter Beards, Mr. Archie Lewis, Mr. Leon Eli, and I looked at the qualifications. I just want to understand, is nobody capable of taking over? And I really hope that when we reach March 2021, that we will not look at the further extension, because surely the department, and surely they must look at who is going to take this department forward. And just a last observation maybe is, if they can tell us, I think Member Kama said in the province over 65, and on what grounds were other, I don't think there's other HODs over the age of 65. I'm talking specifically HODs over 65 in the province. I can be corrected nationally maybe, but not provincially. And why, if a contract is extended for 2 years after 65, why would you then extend it for another 2 years? Surely you will have to look for somebody, and to my knowledge, there's a lot of capable people in the department with long service history to keep this department stable. Thank you, Chair. I'll park it there.
Thank you very much. Premier, with your indulgence, I'm going to take Member Mackenzie as well as Alan, and then conclude on this round. Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just wanted to just get clarity. Obviously, we received input from the Premier on where this case is currently, and there's now new information. They've written to the department again, and one would obviously want all the information present before making any decision or any recommendation going forward. And to this point, we have not, as the Premier indicated, there has some communication, or Mr. Bucher indicated there has some communication going back and forth, but no new letter, I think, he mentioned, has been received. And I just wanted your guidance on how we're going to proceed on this matter, seeing that ostensibly there's still information forward, because the last, having read through the reports and having read through the decision that the government made based on the advice of the Department of Public Services and under the executive authority of the National Minister, which is the custodian of this legislation. So they made their decision based on that. And having read the recommendation, I think on the DPS from the PSC, 8.4 and then 8.6, where they're saying that this was their decision, but they will engage with the DPSA after they've made the decision, which I found a bit bizarre. But nonetheless, I just want to get from you how we're going to proceed, because there was a decision made based on information received from National Government Department. So I'm not sure how we're going to proceed on this matter before I have any form of questioning, because in my mind, and I'm sort of speaking for myself, the decision was made based on information received, and that's where the decision is. And there's just a different interpretation from the PSC and awaiting the final decision or from the new DG, I guess, because I think there's a new DG at the DPSA. So I just don't know how we're going to proceed. I hope I make sense.
Yes, you do, because there is some outstanding information that the Department of the Premier is still waiting on.
Because
but
I'm also
in regard, yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
if I
Go
can just
ahead.
conclude, because I obviously came prepared just to discuss this matter, because I mean, we can discuss every government official in the Western Cape, how many DGs, HOD, but that's not what I came prepared to. So I didn't do my questions around that, around other HODs, around other people. And I just want you to guide me on the questioning on it, because I just came to prepare to discuss this particular matter. And would like just, once there's guidance on this going forward, perhaps I can write to you and for the next committee to discuss another department or another HOD who may or may not be over 65. I just wanted to give your guidance on that. Thank you.
Well, this matter is now, in the domain of this standing committee, and we have called this meeting to discuss this report that we have received, and hence we are doing that. But I take note of what you are saying, that there is still outstanding information that the Department of the Premier has not received and hence has not furnished this committee with. But we are here to pose questions around this report that we have received from the Public Service Commission. So we shall deal with this report now. Thank you. Do you still want to pose questions, or you want to park your questions for the recommendations or resolutions hereafter?
After I'll come in at the resolutions. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Member Allen.
Thank you, Chairperson. I am partly covered, but I do want to echo the sentiment that based on what we are currently discussing, it does appear that it's lopsided, and I do appreciate the fact that the DG gave information regarding the process of consultation and that we are still awaiting that feedback. Furthermore, on page 5, Chairperson, of the report, it states that the PSC consulted with the DPSA and the protocols, etc., but that is not reflected within the report. Keep my comment for the resolutions on a possible way forward in this regard, because I wouldn't want this process, what we're discussing now, or this issue, if I can call it that, to taint the reputation of the official in question. Hence, I would want to come in at the resolution stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Premier, that is the round of questions that I have.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll sort of give a stab at each of these and then also hand over to DG and other members of the Premier's office team. I think, first of all, to the Honourable Gilliam, thank you very much for the question. You speak about the issue. You actually speak about the report itself, page 4, and I think on this one specifically, I think that Mr. Buter will probably be the best person to answer this, copy of the resolution, etc. Mr. Karma, Honourable Karma, thank you very much, and absolutely, your job is to hold the executive to account. So, I mean, that's exactly why this meeting is happening. But also, I mean, what I plead for is also fairness in this process, and we need to get the other side of this equation. We also, perhaps maybe I should talk about the process again. And we must, if we go back to the previous term, and maybe Mr. Jumat can also help us here if I miss any of the points, or even the minister. But we advertised for an HOD. We actually ended up advertising twice, even post headhunting, and eventually we asked the incumbent to please put his name forward, because we really were getting someone to actually put their hand up. And it is an issue, especially in our two big departments. These are big machines to run, and it is not always that easy to get people to apply. And in this process, we eventually ended up with the incumbent. And as I said, that going forward, there was no reason for us based on the advice that we got, to not extend his contract. And then probably looking forward, I know that it is being advertised again, and perhaps there again, I really do sincerely hope that we get people to apply, so that, and even that links through to the Honourable Christians' question, that, are there people in the pipeline? Are there people as part of a succession plan? But I know that some of the incumbents that, even the names that he mentioned, are also in the same category of retirement. So this sometimes becomes quite difficult in the process. The honourable member also asks about incorrect advice, where 8.5, and I mean, I don't agree that it's incorrect advice. And I think this is also the point that that Mr. Butcher raised, that it's all very well saying, no, this is incorrect advice. I mean, who else is going to give you better advice than the DPSA themselves, number one? And number two, maybe that's also linking to the Honourable Mackenzie's question, is, how are we going to proceed going forward? Because we've got two opposite positions. And of course, that's why I've asked the DG to try and, find a space where we get the DPSA to either back up their advice that they gave us, or to at least agree with the PSC that we have one single position, because you cannot have the PSC and the DPSA on two opposite ends of the same position. We've got to find each other. And of course, if we can't find each other, then that's when we as government are going to have to actually ask the courts to find a ruling on this. Also, perhaps talking to the Honourable Christians, I think I have mentioned the succession plan, and there has been work done in this regard, and we are in that middle of that next HR process. And I sincerely hope that that we do find someone through this process. I think I have mentioned to the Honourable Mackenzie from my side that we are trying to find each other as a way to go forward. And when I say we, I actually mean the PSC and the DPSA. We really are trying to work out how we get to a single position. Is the DPSA correct, or are they wrong? And of course, then that means we have to behave one way or the other. I'm going to hand now to the DG, and then maybe to either Andre Jimot or Lucas, if he's or Lucas Beauty, if there's anything else that they want to add. DG?
Thank you, Premier. Chair, I want to respond to the issue that was raised in relation to outstanding communication from National. And as Premier said, I've written to the DPSA on this matter, and I've actually just gone back into my emails. And as recent as this week, I received a range of it's one email that actually emanated from the Public Service Commissioner to the DPSA. It was actually the first email went on the 9th of September, where the Public Service Commissioner now, and that's a Mr. Gastela, asking the DPSA to actually share or confirm the status quo of the finding of the Public Service Commissioner versus the DPSA view on the matter as contained in the submission of the State Law Advisor. That email then received a response from the Chief Director Legal Services now at the, this is now nationally, and basically replying to Mr. Naidu, who's actually, or Mr. Kasela at the Public Service Commissioner, basically saying that the matter is being dealt with by a Mrs. Colette Clark, who's actually the DDG in the Department of Public Service and Administration. Then on the 14th of September, there was another email from Mr. Paul Rockman of the Public Service Commissioner. And again, this is a range of emails, or one email that I received, obviously with a trail at the bottom, writing now to Mrs. Clark, who actually understands the rules and regulations in DPSA, basically asking her to say that they are eager to hear from them, since the matter is also being debated in the legislature tomorrow, and they were under the impression, that is now the Public Service Commissioner, that there was a possibility for the Western Cape Commissioner to attend today's email. Chair, the point I want to make is actually the following. So Mrs. Colette Clark of DPSA on Monday, September the 14th at 3:25 p.m. responded now to the DPS, to the Public Service Commissioner. I'm going to read it to you, it's quite quickly. Dear Mr. Rockman, please note that the matter is still under finalization between the DPSA and relevant structures on the contemporaneous consistent interpretation of policy matters which are related to a national norm and standard. Section 16, that's of the Public Service Act, is a national norm. When we have finalized the matter internally using our validation process, and now she underlines the following, formal correspondence to the effect will be communicated, providing the DPSA's response to the matter after external verification thereto. This information has been communicated telephonically to Mr. Michael Hendrickse in the Department of the Premier, and Mr. Hendrickse is actually on this call. So, Chair, you can see there's a clear attempt from the Public Service Commissioner to get a response from the DPSA in terms of their interpretation. But according to this email, this matter is still under discussion of the DPSA. So we're basically sitting with the situation, as I've indicated in my earlier response. The DPSA gave us advice. This government relied on that advice, and we consistently rely on the advice of the DPSA. The Public Service Commissioner, who's not the custodian of the Public Service Act, makes a certain interpretation on themselves of what the Public Service Act says in a particular matter, declare a particular position on it without actually taking the advice from the DPSA. And that is notwithstanding even the letter where we advise them to say, before you conclude this report, just go to the DPSA and ask them what are their view. They still continued, issued a draft report. We wrote a lengthy response, as Premier said. They didn't even take the time to really respond to some of those issues. They didn't go and ask for advice from the DPSA after we've issued the letter. They concluded their report, and now only after the fact going back to the DPSA to ask for certain advice. I mean, our position is clear. We relied on the advice from the DPSA, who's the custodians of the Public Service Act. We acted accordingly, and therefore we do not agree with the conclusions that the Public Service Commissioner has actually made in this regard. So, Chair, in summary, without obviously deciding on whatever you need to decide in this matter as a committee, there is a report on the table from the Public Service Commissioner. That report has not been consulted with the DPSA. This government has relied on information on the DPSA, and I really think we need to wait on the response from the DPSA, and it's quite clear given the timelines that they're really considering this thing, and then potentially look at what's been pronounced by the Public Service Commissioner. But overall, I think Premier made it quite clear. From our side, we've made a clear attempt, Chair, to engage the Public Service Commissioner with the facts on the table, with the facts at our disposal. They've basically just taken our letter, put it in a drawer, didn't even take the time to respond to it and issue their report. So that is where we find ourselves, Chair. Thanks.
Chair Alan here, Alan Wendy here. I just want to maybe come in on that point, if I can.
Yes, sure, Premier.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I wasn't aware of the email that has just been read out by the DG. I don't want to say that this makes me angry, but it does.
Yeah.
The letter of the 9th of July clearly points out to the PSC why we made our decision. I said to you that between the draft report and the final report, it didn't seem as though they took our points into account at all. That's the first thing. So that's the 9th of July. The 14th of September email basically says to me that in actual fact, what the PSC should do is withdraw this report as a final report pending the outcome of the discussion between the DPSA and the PSC and the DPSA's findings, as they are the custodian of the policy. I mean, that would be what I think would be the right thing to do right now. Because quite frankly, you're sitting not only with a one-sided, lopsided report, you're sitting evidently now with a report that hasn't taken any of the existing letters into account, and they now themselves are asking for clarity. So quite frankly, the report itself, I think, should be withdrawn. But of course, I can't do that or make that decision. But I think perhaps that's something that maybe the Standing Committee could ask them for clarity on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buter, do you still want to contribute?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I think somebody needs to answer Honourable Member Bosman's question about the resolution of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So very briefly, I think the important section here is section 16.7 of the Public Service Act. And what it does is it says that if you wish to retain an employee beyond the age of 67, you need the approval of Parliament with a capital P. Now, there is nothing in the Public Service Act, whether expressly or by implication, that would allow you to read that Parliament with a capital P to be the provincial legislature. You know, we highlighted that flaw to the Public Service Commission. And of course, the argument was that, you know, this section is not applicable based on the advice of the DPSA. But even if for the sake of argument, the Premier is wrong, and section 1617 ultimately is applicable, then it would not be the approval of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament that would have to be sought, but that of the National Parliament. But of course, despite pointing out that flaw, that was dismissed together with all of the other comments that the Premier made across 6 pages or so. And that would explain why there was no resolution by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, because the advice was that it was not necessary to obtain provincial parliamentary approval. If anything, it would have been necessary then to obtain the approval of Parliament in the national sphere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buter. I saw Mr. Jumat's hand is up. Mr. Jumat, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just to confirm the Premier's earlier response in regard to the recruitment processes that we had embarked upon, the Premier is absolutely correct in the fact that the post was advertised twice. We have, in fact, also embarked on a headhunting process. And all of these processes, the entire recruitment and selection process, in our view, was done in terms of the regulatory frameworks that are applicable, was done in terms of the assigned authority, delegated or not, or in fact delegated authority in terms of the regulatory frameworks, and also to indicate that the recruitment and selection process for HODs in particular are, in this province, we have very rigorous recruitment and selection processes. And so whilst candidates may submit sometimes really impressive on paper CVs, when they go through these rigorous, both internal and then the external competency assessments, we unfortunately are not able to find candidates who meet the absolute requirements of the departments. And so therefore it becomes necessary to also headhunt. But we believe all of the recruitment and selection processes were done within the regulatory frameworks as applicable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jumat. I note members Mackenzie and Sayed's hand. I'm going to give you an opportunity, but then I'm going to plot a way forward. I am also of the opinion that we have one-sided information. Member Mackenzie, your hand is now lowered. Member Sayed, I'm giving to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and let me thank the Premier and his team for providing clarity in terms of their side, because the only document that we've had going into the meeting is the investigative report by the PSC. So I think it maybe would have been useful had we had a document. Perhaps we could be furnished after this particular meeting with a, not saying that the minutes are not sufficient, but possibly just with a written input summarizing the inputs that the Premier and his team made, so that the committee can actually have that in writing and members can then look at that when looking at this report, because I don't think this should be the last meeting. I also think others also need to come and account, given the issues that have been raised here. Others outside of provincial government, PSC and DPSA I've mentioned. Chair, just a few questions. I didn't get to the first round. I thought many of my concerns were raised in the first round, but I just wanted to get a sense. After the initial post-65, let me say, quote unquote, contract, was any succession planning undertaken in order to find a suitable head of department? Now that follows from Member Christian's question. I know he mentioned a few names there of individuals, and given the names that he's mentioning and the fact that there is an input saying that many are also falling in that category as well of the 65, was there any succession planning undertaken, and is succession planning currently something that's being undertaken? Then the submission to Cabinet during the June 2018 seeking the extension of the contract of the head of department notes that his initial appointment as HOD on the 1st of December 2016 for a period of 2 years and 4 months. Was this initial appointment the result of a recruitment process as stipulated in the public service prescript? If so, was the age of Mr. Schroeder taken into account in recommending him as the most suitable candidate? Then the said memorandum to Cabinet doesn't necessarily outline any reasons as to why the HOD's contract ought to be renewed as opposed to the post being advertised. What is the reasoning behind the extension sought? Then my final two questions were matters of equity taken into account in the further renewal of Mr. Schroeder's contract, gender equity, as well as the equity around race and ethnicity. Then finally, Mr. Schroeder's initial contract was set to end on the 31st of March 2019. Renewal of the contract was sought by the MEC and the Premier some 9 months before. Is this a usual practice to extend contracts up to 9 months before its expiry? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I note Member Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, yes, I think you did indicate earlier on that we'll discuss the way forward as soon as the round is finished. And then just as a final parting comment, I mean, having gone through all the information at our disposal and having listened to everybody, including the PSC report, and I think we all can concur that there was no malfeasance or anything that was done wrong. The government has done what based on the advice of the DPSA. Because I don't want any of us to leave here being misinterpreted of why we are here today. So there was nothing, there was no malfeasance, nothing was done wrong. It was just the DPSA gave advice because the government has acted, and we're now here because there's a difference of interpretation between the PSC or their understanding, and we can discuss it obviously afterwards, and the DPSA, should there a new letter comes from them, or should they reinforce their letter that they gave 2 years ago. And yeah, I would want to make a recommendation, but we can do it once the department has responded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Premier, DG.
Thank you, Chair. I think as far as the processes, ages, etc., from the Honourable Saeed's questions, thank you for those. I'll leave those to, I presume, Mr. Jumat. He would probably have those answers, but I just want to come in on one of them, and that was around 2019 when we renewed contracts or re-looked at contracts. And I remember this without going back into any minutes or anything. I remember this quite well because we had just gone through a process of renewing the contract for the HOD for the Public Works and Transport Department. And I still remember, so it was probably 9.5 months before this actual day. And I still remember saying that in actual fact, going forward, we should not be putting 5-year contracts in place because we are nearing the end of the term of this government. And that we shouldn't be, if people's contracts are running out, and I have said this before in my first presentation, that because people's contracts are running out, we must not give 5-year contracts. We need to have definitely much shorter contracts, even if we've got to have renewals, etc., because you need to allow a new government to be able to make those decisions. And that's why we took that decision. And you will see after that date that we didn't put any more long-term contracts in place. We just put a maximum of 2-year contracts in place from that time on until the end of the term of that 5th term, or that 5th parliament and that 5th government. That's from me. I'm going to hand over to either DG, or start with DG, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah. Chair, I think Mr. Jumat can respond to it, and I think also obviously the minister responsible for that department. Andre?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, DG. Some of the questions go into some particular people management detail, and I'm going to ask Mr. Michael Hendrikse, who is the DDG for people management, also just to pick up on it, please. Mr. Hendrikse. Michael?
Sorry, colleagues. Chairperson, Premier, Ministers, members, and colleagues, thanks very much. Yes, I think that in terms of the process, it's always best that we start it. The department has, in fact, looked at the succession planning, and that's why, even in its current process, the post has already been advertised as part of that to identify the most suitable candidate for that particular process. I think that, as with everything, and members can maybe have a look at our recruitment policy of the province, which we have adopted. Employment equity does feature as something that we have to look at when we're making an appointment, and that's certainly one of the matters that any appointing authority has to take into account. However, as we've stated often, also that employment equity is not the sole criterion when we look at who is the most suitable. So by all means, definitely, we looked at the panel looks at when they're making a recommendation, as well as the appointing authority, on who to consider. I think the Premier has very articulated the reason why at a particular given time there was the last extension given for Mr. Schroeder. So those were the particular considerations as considered by the minister at the time, as well as in cabinet when they looked at considering the extension. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, I note your hand.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, just to respond to, the reason we could only give him a 2-year contract initially because he was 65. So obviously his age was taken into account. And the reason why we wanted to extend it further was because he was doing an outstanding job, and a 2-year contract is not a very long time. And given that we had such difficulty filling it the first time around, as the Premier explained, it creates a huge amount of uncertainty in a department when you have a change of HODs. It creates a lot of internal politics also, and it destabilizes the organization. So we wanted to do it on that basis. And I must just highlight a little bit of irony here regarding age. People are bringing up the issue of age. The president is 67 years old. Minister Masheka is 65 years old. Must they now step down immediately because they've reached that age? We need to look at the people, who they are, what they are doing. And Mr. Schroeder was head and shoulders the best candidate for the job at the time out of the candidates who applied. And when we did ask him, we did actually have to ask him to apply. And there was just no question about it, and it's been proven in his performance, as it has even been acknowledged. So I think we mustn't get distracted by issues of age and so on and so forth. The issue is, was this contract done properly or not? The extension, and as the Premier has explained, for all the reasons that he has done, we believed it was. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Sorry,
members.
Sorry,
yeah.
Chair?
Yeah.
I just forgot about
Yeah,
the succession
yes, go ahead.
planning. We have really been trying to do succession planning, and because Mr. Schroeder was of retirement age, he has made inordinate efforts to try and create opportunities for people in the organization. And some of them have worked and some haven't, but we certainly do hope that somebody suitable will come forward now in the process which has commenced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I said that I would give that round of questioning and then I would plot a way forward. But I note that member Kama is saying that he wants to follow up. Is it really a question that you have not received any response on?
Thank you very much, Chair, and for the responses. Chair, I really wanted to I wanted to follow up because the DG spoke about, I think even I read an email that the matter is there is still a discussion between the PSC and the I think DPSA. So what DPSA, yes. What I wanted to understand from the provincial government side is, because the PSC has now made its report final and it has made recommendations. So I wanted to get what is the response of the Premier to that. Is it that because he does not agree, is not going to comply, or is it that he is finding ways to register that disagreement and possibly through a court? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. That's not what the Premier said, but I'm giving over to you, Premier.
Thank you very much. We are complying with the advice that we got. And quite frankly, as I said up front, I disagree with the PSC's report. I disagreed with their draft report. And I now disagree even more because of hearing or reading or the DG reading an email from the PSC now only on the 14th of September asking the DPSA for clarity. I mean, that in itself just says it all. So again, we are complying with the advice that we were given, and we will comply with that advice that we are given. And if it changes, we will then have to relook at this. But right now, we are complying with the advice that we are given.
Thank you very much, Premier. Members, I'm then going to close on the round of questions. And at this point in time, I want to say thank you to the Premier, and thank you to the DG, and thank you for the Minister, and to the officials of the Department of the Premier, including the legal services who have joined us in the Standing Committee meeting today. I'm going to then say goodbye to all of you, and thank you for meeting with us. Members, I'm going to ask you then to stay behind so that we can conclude on our internal administrative tasks attached to this Standing Committee meeting today. Premier, thank you very much. All the officials, Minister, please go well.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to the honourable members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Members? We have had the presentations and the input and the responses to all the questions. And we have a status report of where this matter now is. I'm going to take recommendations. Member Christians, I note.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, like we said the whole time now, you know, it's. I think it was a good meeting, but I just believe that we were not given all the facts. You know, like I said, it's a lopsided report. So I think, and I think we asked the questions, but I think they did say now that they're going to have a succession plan, but maybe we must just ask them in writing about I'm talking about the Department of Education, or that we don't face the same problem when we come to next year, where they say we don't have any people to take over from Mr. Suda. But I think we should also get the necessary information, the commission and the Public Service Commission, and DPSA, the different reports, so that we have clarity on this. Because now the commission is saying this and DPSA is saying the other thing. So I mean, it's very difficult because it's different interpretations of the law. So I don't know how we're going to move forward there, but I think the only way to move forward is to get, like the Premier said, maybe the court to rule over this matter. So all that I want to share, that we don't have the same problem again, that we don't have somebody to take over when we talk about succession. Maybe just to ask the department what is their plans when it comes to succession. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Member Allen, then Member Karma and Sayed.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. I would move that we as a committee resolve to obtain an urgent legal opinion from the WCPP, seeing that there is remarks with regard to which parliament and parliament with a capital P, etc., for us to resolve in order to obtain that legal opinion from the WCPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Karma.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Member Ellen has first captured my first...
Apostle Berg, are you driving? Because you can't make notes when you drive, eh?
Member Christians, please do not make notes, but also switch off your mic.
Yeah, I need to meet with you, man.
Member Christians.
I've got a...
Thank you very much, Chair. I was saying my first recommendation was captured by Member Allen on the legal opinion that we should get from the WCPP, and perhaps, Chair, because the difficulty here is really what we have is a one report from the Service Commission, one-sided report. And on the other side, Chair, we even though the department and the Premier are saying we've submitted this and this and this, they have not submitted it to the committee, so that we could have even had that other side. So I would want to recommend, Chair, that we perhaps have a I don't know if it's going to be in a form of a meeting, but get to have a presentation from the PSC, if that is possible, and the DPSA on the subject matter, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Sayed. I'll come back to that one, Member Karma.
Thank you, Chair. No, I want to agree with all the recommendations. Just to say that if we can get, given the fact that we've got a PSC report, it's the only, whether it's one-sided or it is one view that's being expressed here, we've heard the viewpoint on the part of the executive of the state or the executive of the provincial government. Now, still we don't have that in writing. I think one recommendation is that we request from the Department of the Premier to send us their perspective on the matter in writing, and also the correspondence that they've been referring to, so that we can obviously engage with that. We've heard it, but I think it helps for us to have it. And then as a follow-up, to then call the Public Service Commission to take us through, because now the commentary we had on the PSC report was a commentary from the one on whom it is reporting about, which is fine. They've given their view. I think let's hear from the PSC, but let's also hear from the DPSA. Not necessarily right now, because they do want time, I think, to look into things. We've got a recess period, we've got some visits happening, so we've got to give some time, I think, for them to basically get their house in order. So I think we call the two, but also on Member Allen's input around the legal opinion. We also have a meeting with the WCPP legal person who's giving the legal opinion. Once they've given that legal opinion, to take us through that legal opinion as well. I think that would be, and then after all those sessions, we can take it from there, whether we want to call everybody under one roof. And I'm saying roof because maybe by that time, hopefully, we'll be able to have the under a roof and not necessarily on the screen, you know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Member Bosman. I note you, Member Allen. Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I want to sound agree with Member Kama that the report is definitely one-sided, but I want to go as far as saying that the report is biased because in the table of contents, the Public Service Commissioner refers to a list of annexures, but that list of annexures is not attached to this report.
Attached to the report, yeah.
Also, in his investigation, section 4 of the report, he makes reference to the approved submission authorizing Mr. Schroeder's retention as tag C, as well as he's got tag D as annexures, but none of those documents were furnished to us as part of this report. What I do have in front of me, in which we got as part of the ATC, is the response from the Office of the Premier, which is the letter that was sent to the Public Service Commission, contesting this, the allegations in the report. So I want to go as far as saying, before we do anything else and before we make decisions about who to invite, we need to move with the recommendation that Member Allen made, and that we get clarification on what the legal status is. And the legal status, and what we need the legal advisors in the WCPP to advise us is if they could interpret section 16(7) of the Public Service Act to get us a definition of what Parliament with a capital P is, and whether that refers to the National Assembly or whether that refers to the provincial legislature, because when I read the Public Service Act, it makes reference to provincial legislatures and it also makes reference to provincial departments. And if the authors of that act wanted to be explicit and say that this appointment needs to be approved by the provincial legislature, they would have said the word provincial legislature and they wouldn't have used the word parliament, because the Western Cape is the only provincial parliament in the country. So my first point is that we get clarification on what the legal status of that term is in terms of the Public Service Act of 1994, and that we also get clarity in terms of what Mr. Schroeder's status is as an employee, because that the Public Service Act clearly separates an employee of the public service from a contractor, which an HOD is. So we need to get clear understanding of what the legal framework is there, and what, when we talk about retirement and retention of services, how does it apply to employees of the public service, and how does it apply to contractors, which the HOD will then have become? And as I said earlier, the definition of parliament versus provincial legislature, because we can do all of this work and then it will come out that not within our legal remit to have any of these discussions. Chair, what I'd also want to suggest is that we write to the Speaker and we ask the Speaker to ascertain from the Public Service Commissioner whether this is indeed his final report. Because if the Public Service Commissioner is now going around after submitting this report and asking for clarification, the Speaker must perhaps ask him why that wasn't done before. Because I think that will be very useful also to understand, is this report final? Can we have copies of those annexures? And then we move forward once we've got that legal opinion, Chairperson.
Thank you very much for all your recommendations. I now want to just stand still with the recommendation of Member Bosman, and members ask that we can conclude with that recommendation. Also, it includes the legal opinion of Member Allen, and Member Karma also submitted to that. If we can conclude with that going forward, doing that first before we get to any other recommendation, because that would plot a way for us, a way forward as to what do we do next. Can I have your secondment in terms of that?
I'm in agreement, Chairperson, for Christian.
Thank you very much.
I support as well.
Okay, it was part of yours. Member Mackenzie, you said you support. Member Karma, it was part of yours. Can we go forward in this way that I have just proposed? Member Karma?
Chair?
Yes.
Are you excluding the other recommendation?
I'm excluding the others for now. I'm saying let's go with the legal opinion, the writing to the speaker in regard to this. And then after having that meeting, and please note that our next meeting is scheduled for the 13th of October, which is sort of the last one before we embark on the annual reports and first the adjustments and then the annual report season.
No, that is fine, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Sayed?
No, it's fine, Chair. We'll go with it's fine, but we're not. We must say that we are not necessarily cancelling out a meeting with the PSC and the Public Service Commission. That's
no, I'm just saying let's go on the legal opinion and writing to the speaker for now first, and let's get that information before we continue. Member Bosman?
Chair, if I could also perhaps ask, out of respect for Mr. Schroeder, if we can as a committee agree to refrain from discussing this in the media and perhaps waiting for that legal certainty so that we don't malign the name of an official whilst we're still waiting to get all the facts, Chairperson.
Okay. Members, there's another proposal on the table. Member Said, I note your hand.
I don't agree with that proposal from Member Bosman, because raising issues around the process, as we've all raised here, is not necessarily maligning an official. If we start talking about him being responsible for his own appointment, then we are maligning. This is a political terrain, and we are representing the public. We've got the right to raise our issues, even though we are seeking further advice as a committee. But there is a report before us. We're not necessarily saying that the report is cast in stone. Hence, we are even asking that there's a legal opinion. We are saying that we'll call the PSC at some point. We can't be restricted in terms of discussing this matter. It's not before court at the moment.
Thank you, Member Christians.
Chairperson, thank you, Chairperson. No, I'm just, this matter was on the news this morning, saying it will be discussed in the standing committee, saying all about this. So it's out in the media already. I want to agree, you know, we don't attack the individual, but it is a sensitive matter, and it is an appointment. I think it's in the interest, if we can tell us, I mean, I don't think we ever attack the individual, but it's the processes that's questioned, and I don't think we should be limited to voice our opinion. So I want to say I also don't agree with that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Karma?
Captured, Chair, it's not compulsory to speak.
Okay. Members Allen and Mackenzie?
Chairperson? Oh, Member Allen, sorry.
You can go.
Chairperson, I agree with the sentiments as expressed. I don't think one and I don't think any member of this committee would like to go into individuals. I would be comfortable if, particularly on this matter and the process going forward, and any member of any individual party can say whatever they want out there. I mean, that's their choice, obviously, and no government in the world will stop them. But I do think that as the chairperson of the committee, that perhaps one should give you a guide, a mandate, if any official matter need to be spoken on, that you as the chairperson, as in any other committee, do speak on this matter, if any official communication needs to come out of this committee on this matter.
Okay, members, there's a counter one. Okay, Member Allen.
Thank you so much, Chair. I agree with Member Mackenzie, and I hear the sentiment from Member Christians as well as Member Syed, but obviously then to again say that we need to apply extra caution in terms of if we deal with the media in this regard, because I doubt anyone would want to taint his reputation. Thank you.
Chair, my hand is again up.
Yes, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's a counter proposal, what Member Mackenzie is saying, because you remember, if it's official and it comes from committee, usually the chair of committee does it when it's official. Yes. But we're gonna respond on from our party point of view. That's different. So it's not a counter proposal. We agree that the chairperson is the official spokesperson of the committee, but as party officials, as party reps, we will then do it according to our party. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I note members Bosman and Sayed.
Chair, just to be clear, I'm not saying that members cannot speak on the process or make political statements. I'm just saying we need to be mindful of the rules that we're bound by, and that we don't discuss HR matters. So we can discuss the process and we can just discuss the reports in front of us, but I'm asking that we don't refer to individuals, because as much as we make political statements, we've got an official who's had more than 42 years of service to this department, whose name is now in the public domain. And for members of the public, they don't make the distinction between a report, the status of the report, or what the report says. They just put the headlines together. So what I'm asking is that we observe the rule that we don't speak on individual HR matters, but I've got no problems with members making political statements, as long as members just keep the name of the official out of the media, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Syed, you still want to say something? Your hand was up.
Yes, it was up. Thank you, Chair, for noting me. Chair, I don't think, and again, I'll agree with Member Christians, there's no counter proposal to Member Mackenzie's one. We agree on the official aspect of this discussion. The Chair, as always is the case, we are coming from political parties. We'll have our political take. But to also indicate that we are not going to mention names of the name of the individual is out in the public domain. In fact, and I will make reference here to myself, when the MEC responded, and I think she had the right to respond robustly. So when we have spoken about even the MEC, not the MEC, when we've spoken about the HOD, we have often raised the matter, but in the same context, spoken about, even in the House, spoken about his contribution, and we've always made that clear to the public. And I think we as members also have that responsibility to, in fact, basically commend him as well, and we have been doing that. So it doesn't mean the mere mention of the name is going to, but I agree, we focus on the process, even politically, when we do raise our issues. And it's never been one where we are targeting the individual. That's never been the case. But naturally, the name of the individual is out there. That's the individual in Wood, but he's not the subject matter. I agree. And we speak about the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Bosman, your hand is up. Is it up again, or is it from the previous time?
No, Chairperson, it's from the previous time.
Okay, all right, thank you, members. Then we are in agreement. There's no counter proposal. Going forth and speaking to the media, the chairperson of the standing committee speaks to the media in regard to what matters is in front of the committee. In terms of members, remember we are a multi-party committee. So in terms of members from different parties, if they wish to speak in that regard with that party cap on their head, then they do so. Members, can I now step off this? The procedural officer has indicated to me that she has captured all the resolutions or the recommendations that has been made. Moving then on with the second part of this committee meeting, it is the draft minutes of the 25th of August 2020. The procedural officer is just putting it on the screen. If you have not read it, please check your attendance and the apology if you have rendered an apology. I'm moving with page 1, the latter part of it there at the bottom. And then I go on to page 2. Please check the recommendation and the request for information. And then I would want to request a proposer and a seconder to adopt these draft minutes.
Chair, I propose.
Brother Christians.
Thank you. It's members Bosman and member Christians. Thank you very much. Members, with that said, it is the last standing committee meeting before we go into constituency week, and we will see each other when we embark on the Eden Karoo or the Karoo part of the Standing Committee Education Visit Week. I note Wasima and Member Mackenzie.
Member Mackenzie can go before me if it's
Okay.
No, I saw your name was up, Wasim. I didn't want the chairperson to miss you. That's why.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mackenzie. We'll be sending, Chief, through you, thank you for this. We'll be sending out an email later this week on the visit week, and members will get the electronic pack sent to them also. So a hard copy I will keep with me unless a member wants me to have it delivered to the offices. And in that email that will go out, we'll give all the contents of how the meetings will take place, given the fact that there are only 4 members allowed on the school, and how the process and the grouping will work as well. So that's just a heads up for the email that will be sent out later this week.
Thank you very much. Members, we will then, God willing, inshallah, we will see each other on the 28th of September. Bright and breezy on the bus, except for member Bosman, who will join us in the Karoo. Members, Member Mackenzie, did you want to say something?
No, I just say thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members. Member Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chair.
No, I'm just saying thank you and good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
We're looking forward to the Christians and the branches.
Yeah, he's building branches that we can hear he's building.
Building branches on the road.
Member Kama, you must wait until 12 o'clock midnight and you enjoy your day tomorrow. Members, please go well. Siraj and Candace, thank you very much for